Warning, what you are about to hear is two guys talking completely unfiltered.
Cut. What are you doing? We don't do disclaimers. The show's called Totally Unprofessional for a reason.
I'll see what you did. You're wasting our intro time.
Yeah. Start the show.
We are live and ready to go for episode number 36 of our Totally Unprofessional podcast. I'm Justin, and as Manuel mentioned on Monday, he's not here. It's just me. Which, after listening to that shit, I want to get some stuff clear right off the top. I was gone Monday night due to a fantasy football draft, which was true, and I left it up to him whether he wanted to wait a day to do the podcast together, or if he just wanted to go ahead and do it solo. We've had conversations like that in the past where we've both had engagements of other sorts, and there's been days where we waited, and there's been days where I've done it by myself. But let's get something straight here. He bitched out just like I did for his fantasy football draft, which is why I'm doing this episode by myself. And so, for the record, I got the second best draft grade in the league after that draft, so it was well worth it. And I don't know what the deal was with taking shots at me when I'm not here, but you don't want to open that can of worms, old man. You don't want to do that. As I said, this is episode 36. We still haven't reached an episode number high enough to match Manuel's age yet. So, like I said, don't open a can of worms that you can't handle, buddy. As you know, he mentioned that I was at the Anaheim Fit Expo on Sunday. We'll talk a little bit about that today, and we'll talk a little bit of football news. Some football news has gone down, so we'll talk a little bit about that since he covered a shit ton of that and wanted to be the armchair quarterback, if you will, and talk about the Colin Kapernick situation, which there's lots of opinions about that right now, and I'll give my 2 cents here in the next few moments here. Talk a little bit of baseball, talk a little bit about my Red Sox. Right now, right in the thick of things, leading the wild card race. David Ortiz finishing up his last West Coast trip. I'll be headed there Sunday to watch him in his last game in Oakland. So that means I've got to see him at Dodger Stadium, and I'll get to see him in Oakland at the A Stadium, which is pretty cool. Get to do my annual game with Timmy. Shout out to T-Rod if you're listening to this. We do our annual Red Sox A's game. Been there 5 years in a row. This will be number 6. I'm 0 for 5, hoping to break that streak this year. Hoping to get a win finally with my team. Getting tired of watching him lose when we're in his town. But he's always good to me. His family's always good to me. So be looking forward to visit them and hang out in the Bay a little bit. He moved to Stockton now, so we'll have to make a stop off and go see that Nate Diaz mural in Stockton. See if we can't get a picture of that. So as far as the Anaheim Fit Expo, Manuel, there was a little bit of a discrepancy, if you will, about why Manuel didn't go. He said last minute he was trying to plan for that. That's bullshit. He knew at least a week out that we were planning on going, because before we went live the week before on the podcast, I had mentioned it to him, and he was like, I don't know. And then as we got closer, he was still on the fence. Couldn't make up his mind. So he started pussyfooting around, and when we finally got to the day before on Saturday, he decided that he couldn't go due to other situations that he couldn't get out of at that point. But he knew a week in advance. So you can't say that me and Mark left you, because that's a damn lie. Now, I do think that a couple things. Listening to the podcast and you mentioned that we were gone and that we left you, that's bullshit. I've established that. The other thing is you need to get your own material, buddy. You keep stealing my eat a big bowl of dicks line that now I've made a catchphrase on this show. And you got to work on your own material, okay? I know you're getting old. I know the mind don't work like it used to. But you definitely need to come up with your own material or new catchphrase for yourself. So, that being said, we did kind of make him feel a little bit bad, though. I will say this. Me and Mark took off to Anaheim. We left early on Sunday morning. and drove out there. The drive wasn't horrible. I was expecting it to be a whole lot worse. It really wasn't all that bad. For those of you who know the Anaheim area, the Anaheim Convention Center, which was where the expo was held at, is actually across the street from Disneyland, which was crazy. I really wasn't expecting that at all. As we got through the directions and got down there, I was like, wait a minute, like that's the Hollywood Tower of Terror, and where are we supposed to turn? Oh, we're supposed to turn on Disney Way and make a right. I'm like, oh damn, we're right here by Disneyland. So that was pretty cool. So it was interesting to be down there and see that, and then on top of that, have the Fit Expo, which was inside a giant warehouse that you had to walk through that was completely empty just to get inside the building. And then they actually had the expo itself, and you make a right into the other building where it was actually held at with all the vendors and everything else that was going on. So for us to walk through there, we kind of jokingly were like talking about that we missed it and stuff like that, but it literally looked like you had to walk through an airplane hangar to get in there. But when we got in there, we realized that it was double the size of the San Jose Fit Expo, which is where me, Manuel, and Mark, the three of us, went the year before in July. So we were fully expecting it to be something similar, and I wouldn't say it was completely different, because it wasn't completely different, but it was definitely different than what it was when we went to San Jose. Different main guests there. Different vendors there. There was a lot less of clothing selling going on. There was a lot less of supplement selling going on. It was more of different things for lifting teams, different things as far as meal planning. That was a big thing this year, was meal prep at the expo, which if you're into fitness and training, you know that's a huge thing. Going to the gym is kind of the easy part. It's the eating that you have to get under control. It's being able to have a diet that your body's willing to take care of and handle. That's the problem. So there was a lot of that. We sampled some stuff, which unfortunately most of the places that we sampled, they're only down south. They don't deliver like to your house from online ordering. They only, they were building their own demographic and their own markets. But nonetheless, cool to try, cool to check out. Picked up some organic tortillas, which I still haven't tried yet. I got to try those out. Those were free. That's one of the biggest things about going to these Fit Expos is there's all kinds of freebies. You get everything from pre-workouts to sleeping pills to actual proteins. I mean, the ice cream. There was all kinds of stuff. And some of the headliners that were there were, as mentioned on the podcast on Monday from Manuel, was Tito Ortiz, C.T. Fletcher, Billy Blanks, the guy who started Taibo, was a headliner. And there was a few others that were there throughout the weekend. But so I actually did get to meet Tito Ortiz, which was cool. The first UFC fight that I ever remember watching was the first fight between Tito Ortiz and Ken Shamrock. And so for me to get the opportunity to meet him face to face, shake his hand, take a picture with him, get his autograph, was pretty cool. The dude's every bit of 6'3". He's got giant hands, man. So to get hit with those big old ham hocks is gotta not feel good. Very, very cool, very nice. He's very talkative to the people in line, taking pictures, as were most of the people that we met at the Fit Expo. Which sometimes is surprising. There's always that saying of don't meet your heroes, don't meet famous people that you like, because they tend to be assholes. Not that day. Everybody that we met that day was really cool. They were very nice. They were willing to talk with you for a few minutes, or a minute or two. Very receptive, which was awesome. Very cool. They weren't just like let's take a picture, next in line. Like they were willing to chat with you for a second. And Tito was cool. Definitely an experience. And to think, like I actually told him that. I said, hey man, I appreciate you taking the picture with me and everything, and taking the time out. You're one of the first people I remember watching in MMA, and when I started getting into it. And he's like, dude, I can't believe I've been in the game 19 years now, because now he currently is in Bellator, was his last fight. And I've heard rumors lately that it's a possibility he may fight again. So kind of crazy that you get to meet somebody that you see on TV and that you get to see, banging on people in the octagon. The other person that I saw there, I didn't actually meet him, but we saw him. We were standing in line waiting to meet CT Fletcher, and across the way, during these expos, they have different attractions. Like they have, they do CrossFit events, they do jiu-jitsu, they have the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Invitational, or in this case, it was the Worlds. Then they also have lifting competitions for actual competitive lifters, and for they have competitions like push-ups, crunches, stuff like that for people that come to the expo, just spectators. And the booth and stage that was there for the lifting, it was, I believe at the time it was benching, was right next to where the line was to meet CT Fletcher, and the guys that were getting ready to go on stage were warming up behind the curtain. And I happened to look over as I was talking to Mark, and I seen this guy, and I was like, man, I know that guy. I know that face and that mustache. He had the twisted up pirate mustache. I was like, damn, man, that face looks really familiar. And as I stood there, and Mark was talking to another gentleman in line, who would later be known as Alan, who we saw several times throughout the expo. I looked over and I tapped Mark on the shoulder. I said, hey, man, I think that's Tate Fletcher of the Pirate Radio podcast. He goes, I don't think it is. I think you're wrong. A few more seconds, I stood there staring at him, kind of like leaning over. I was like, nah, man, like, I'm telling you, I think that's him. And I've heard Tate Fletcher on the Pirate Radio podcast with Cowboy Cerrone, amongst others. He's liked a couple pictures that we've posted on the Instagram page. So I think he was like, man, like, I know that. Well, then that guy, Alan, who was standing there talking to us, coincidentally enough, was like, hey, man, that is him. Like, I'm pretty sure that is him. And he happened to walk by with another guy who was with him. He was a friend or whoever he was with him, and they walked right by us, and sure enough, it was Tate Fletcher, which was pretty cool to see him in person. He's a lot bigger in person than I thought from seeing videos of him online, so that was pretty cool. Also, like I said, CT Fletcher, who was the big part of the expo for me and Mark, we only waited in line probably about 15-20 minutes. And then we were towards the front of the line, so we got to get up there pretty quick and take our pictures with him and everything. But as we were there, like that time alone was worth the trip. CT Fletcher, if you don't know, I've mentioned him on the podcast before. He was a power lifter who holds the world record for the straight back curl, with your back against the wall and you got to curl, the weight straight up to your chest. And he, at this day, as of today, he's 57, I believe. But he has his own YouTube channel, and I'm sure many people have seen his face, seen his memes, and those things where for motivational lifting stuff. And he's unconventional, so to speak, in his motivational techniques of training people. Many people have gone to him. Kai Green, who's a bodybuilding competitor, Miss Olympia, Dana Lynn Bailey has gone to him. Terry Crews, the actor Terry Crews, he's been there. Seen several faces on his YouTube channel, and also he's been on Stone Cold Steve Austin's podcast twice. But if you listen to him and his motivation, if you're the type of person that likes high energy, likes somebody pushing your boundaries, man, that guy, he's intense, man, and he's definitely been motivational to me. That when it comes to lifting, there's times where I don't listen to music. Like, I just listen to his stuff, because when he gets into it, he's screaming, pull that shit, lift that shit, and he's getting animated with the body movements of whoever's lifting, and he still does lift. I mean, the dude still got huge arms, 57 years old, the dude's got muscles on top of muscles still, and it's ridiculous. So to get to meet him in person as somebody who motivates you, on a regular basis when you're doing things of that nature, like, it was crazy. It was definitely worth the trip. Mark said the same thing. He was in agreement, that part alone was worth the trip. And so for us, when we got up there, he had his whole crew with him. He had his son with him. He had Big Rob, who he's a part of the Iron Addicts crew. He had Herc with him, and there was another gentleman who I didn't recognize. I'm not real sure who he is, but he's been in there too. But to get up there and shake his hand, and without even saying a word to him, before you could even get anything out, he's telling us thank you. I appreciate you coming over here and taking a picture with me, coming over here, taking the time to shake my hand. I appreciate your support of, the Iron Addicts gym and the Iron Addicts brand, because they had their clothing and hats and everything else out there. Definitely had to pick up a tank top for me and my girl. So made sure that I got those knocked out of the way. And he was just super appreciative and very nice. And as we took the pictures, they had a lady who was taking the pictures for everybody. You just handed your phone, and she took the pictures for you, which was really cool. It made it go quick. But he was willing to stop and talk to, a few people, here and there when they wanted to talk to him. And he was just super receptive to even listening, like, for a few minutes. And he was standing there, taking pictures with everybody. When I got up there, like I said, he thanked me and stuff. We took 2 pictures, and I shook Big Rob's hand, I shook Herc's hand, I shook his son's hand, and I told him, I said, hey man, I want to say thank you to you, because you motivate me. When I'm in the gym, or if I'm at work and I just feel like it's a shitty day and I don't want to push through, going hard, at work, listening to that shit or watching one of those videos on my lunch break can tend to turn up the volume a bit on what I'm doing and get my ass in gear. And I just want to tell you thank you. Hearing you scream, pull that shit, lift that shit, rep that shit, I command you to grow, motherfucker, talking to his muscles. I appreciate that, man. It's done wonders for me. And he, without missing, anything of it, like, oh man, like, yeah, whatever, it's cool. He literally put his hand on my shoulder as he shook my hand again and said, hey man, that's the reason why I do this stuff, is, to motivate people and to push people. And, that's a big reason why I do this stuff and come do these meet and greets, so I can hear people's story on how, they're doing, because there's a lot of people that don't get to go down to his gym. For those of you who don't know, he grew up in Compton, and his gym is down south, in the Long Beach area. And so for like most people, like the common person, they never get to go there. And so for him to sit there and say, hey man, that's why I do this stuff, is for guys who can't come down there, who need that motivation, and I'm not necessarily their trainer. It was cool that he sat there and talked for a minute with me. And Mark, he talked to Mark for a minute as well, which was really cool. But the funny part, and I mentioned this earlier, was how we messed with Manuel. And that was that after we took pictures with Tito and CT Fletcher, we sent him to Manuel. We're like, you missed out. You fucked up. Because, he, like I said, up until the last minute, he was talking about jumping in the car and rolling with us, and then he decided not to. And so we did have to make him feel a little bit bad that he didn't go. We're like, dude, and when we got back, I know he felt bad, because we were like, dude, you missed it. It was so much fun. And he said at one point that his wife actually told him to turn off his phone because he kept getting pictures from both of us messing with him, telling him stuff about how he wasn't there and whatnot, which was funny. And then on top of that, just the whole experience of being on the road like that, to go drive 3.5 hours down south like that, you want to make that trip worth it. And meeting CT Fletcher and Tito Ortiz definitely made it worth it. But to be around like-minded people, as far as people that want to be fit, people that want to be in the gym, people that aren't going to go, well, do you got to go to the gym tonight? Let's go do this instead. Or, hey man, like, I don't want to go to the gym. If you have a training partner that's like, hey, not tonight, man, I don't feel like working out tonight. To have those people in a building all with the same mindset of, nah man, like, we're here to work out, we're here to feel better. Some guys lift to get bigger, some guys lift to feel better. Some of them, it's just therapy to get away from the everyday grind, and to be in a place where everybody is on that same wavelength goes a long way. I mean, literally, me and Mark looked at each other and said the same thing after we met CT Fletcher, and that was like, hey, can we find a gym right now? Can we go work out right now? Which was wicked. He's that type of motivation. And then I do have to mention this. I do got to shout out Mark about a place that we went to eat afterwards. We went and ate at the California Pizza Kitchen, and lady comes up, takes our order, and Mark orders an appetizer. And for those of you who listen to this podcast and you know me, you know that I am very, very particular about my food. That I don't mess around when it comes to my food. I'm a very picky person as far as like what I eat, and I'm also very particular about like food touching and that kind of business because it's just the way I've always been. It's almost like an OCD thing. But Mark ordered an appetizer, and it was macaroni and cheese, like the shells, but it was in a crust. Like, I don't want to say fried because I don't think it was fried, but it was in a crust. And we're sitting there, and I see they bring it out. There's like 4 squares on the plate, and he eats it. He takes a bite out. He's like, dude, grab one. And I'm like, I don't know, man. I'm really, really picky about this. And he's like, no, for real. Like, you got to try this. It'll change your life type deal. And I start laughing. I'm like, yeah, whatever, man. He's like, no, really. Get on this shit. So I grab one. I take a bite. Dude couldn't have been more right. Like, I love macaroni and cheese. You know, a lot of times that's, you know, my carbs in a meal. But this was different. Like, it still had the creaminess of regular, you know, Velveeta shell macaroni and cheese, but it also had the crunchiness from the crust on the outside from the way that it was cooked. I couldn't have done it better myself if I was at home experimenting with food. So shout out to Mark for turning me on to that at that place. It was bomb, you know, and like I said, overall it was just a good trip. Everything went well. We had no issues. Yeah, so Robert Oberst was a guy that
like I said,
that we met in San Jose.
I know he wanted to be there.
He had just come out with a 5-hour interview. He mentioned another guy that we saw
at the time
at San Jose,
San
Robert
Jose.
Oberst. And this time when we saw him, man, he was pretty lean. He was leaned out quite a bit.
Athlete. He's a former strongman.
Which
when we
was
met
fine,
him in
you
San
know,
Jose,
it was cool to see him. He still looked just as big, just as scary.
And then
I showed him a picture of when I took a picture with him from San Jose. He was like, dude, he's like, I remember that. He goes, I thought I remember taking a picture with you and your buddy, and he goes, I thought I had seen you guys before, and which I'm sure they say that to everybody. If somebody says, hey, man, I saw you last year at a different expo. But still a cool dude. Stood there and talked to us. Stood there and hung out for a few minutes and just kind of shot the shit with us. I showed him the picture, and he saw his shoes, which were like a pair of like Nike cross-training type shoes, and he was like, dude, I miss those shoes. They were so comfortable. He was wearing some American flag Converse, which was hilarious to see such a big dude in a shoe that has no support. Which, you know, it was just funny how he was like legitimately sad about not having those shoes. So yeah, I mean that, and then like I said, we made that trip back and made sure that we told Manuel all about it and told him how bad that he missed out on all that stuff. So if you hear him tell you that we left him behind and went without him, or that he didn't have the opportunity to change his plans around so that way he could make it, he's full of shit, because he knew a week in advance and he had the opportunity to go with us. So don't be crying, old man. I know the truth. As we get into some sports business here, like I said, the Red Sox, they're 2 games up in the wild card right now. And last time I checked, they were a game and a half back of Toronto in the AL East race. So they're right there in the middle of it. I believe his name is Yoan Moncada, is set to make his starting debut for the Red Sox tonight against the A's. He just got called up yesterday and joined the team. So it should be cool to see him. He had a huge All-Star weekend. He's had a huge minor league career so far that he's been crazy good in the minors, so they've been waiting on him. So when me and my girl go Sunday to the game, it'll be the second time we've seen a rookie for the Red Sox, because we saw Andrew Benintendi at the Dodger game before he got hurt, and that day he went 4 for 4. So definitely cool to see some of these younger guys, as we see Ortiz on his way out, getting to see where they're headed. You know, just the main problem I see for the Red Sox is what it was last year too, is pitching. You know, quietly Rick Porcello's killing it right now, but he could easily be a 20-game winner if our bullpen could get their shit together. That's a big problem right now. You know, David Price, who the $200+ million man, is doing okay, but he's not doing $200 million good. He's come unraveled in a handful of games this year. That's been a problem. You know, that having the help of the offense hasn't always been there. I get that part, but there's been games where he's been right in the middle of it, where he pitches 4 great innings and then falls apart in the next 2 to 3 innings, and we wind up losing because of it. You know, that's a problem. We have to make sure that that there's bullpen help. and that we can pitch consistently, which has kind of been an issue. But we seem to be hitting a stride. Yesterday we put up 16. It was either 12 or 16 runs on the A's. So we'll see what happens as that series goes along. As like I said, I'll get to be at the finale, and then in 2 weeks I'll be at the Giants-Cardinals game. So I've gone to a Dodgers-Red Sox game, A's-Red Sox game, and I'll be at the Giants-Cardinals game in 2 weeks to see AT&T Park. So the only park by the time we're done in September, the only park I haven't been to is Petco in San Diego, which I heard is also a very cool. It's within walking distance of everything. Very cool park, and I actually know a guy out there who cooks and does everything out there for the Chargers and the Padres. So maybe hook up with him and see if there's anything that he can do to hook up a connection out there. One of the other things that I wanted to touch on with football is that preseason is winding down. It's in its last weekend, which means college football started this weekend. Couple crazy games slated for Saturday in Alabama and USC. The sleeper game is going to be Houston and Oklahoma, I believe. That game should be a good one. I think it's going to be better than people think. And just a great way to start off college football and get you ready. You get your feet wet with college football this weekend before you actually jump in both feet with the NFL next weekend. So we'll kind of see how things go. They're making their final cuts this weekend in the NFL. So if you've already had your fantasy drafts like Manuel and I have, then you know that there's some major guys that are on the chopping block. And like I said, one of the guys that whose head might be on the chopping block is Colin Kaepernick. Manuel gave his 2 cents on Monday about the situation, and like I said, I'll give you mine right now. I don't have a problem with Colin Kaepernick standing up for an issue that he feels strongly about. I have no issue with that whatsoever. The problem that I have with Colin Kaepernick standing up for this issue is that the way he's going about it is disrespectful. People can say, oh, well, he has a right to stand up. He has a right to speak on this, which is very true. He does. He has a right to stand up for his beliefs, no pun intended. But to be honest, this is not the way to go about it. People are saying, well, it's his way of showing protest. Really? Because his way of showing protest is disrespecting people who have lost their lives. The American flag stands for more than just this country as a nation. It stands for people that have lost their lives, people whose families have lost family members, husbands, wives, sons, daughters, families, kids that no longer have parents because they've gone to war and gone to battle for guys like me, Manuel, my brother, Colin Kaepernick himself, so that way every day he can make his millions of dollars and play football for a living. And you disrespect all those people by not standing up and showing respect to that flag. Now, there's a reason why people are asked to stand up and remove your hats and, show respect and honor that. It's not about, oh, well, this country is represented solely by that flag, so if I have something against this country, then that flag is what I'm going to disrespect. That's the problem that I have. If you want to talk about these issues and you want to tell everybody why you're against them and why you have issues with police and the brutality against black people and all this stuff, great. Do it when the reporters talk to you in your press conference or when they come to your locker and they talk to you. Speak out about that stuff. One of the biggest players that I've said this many times before, I don't like in LeBron James for the way that he plays the game and the way that things have gone out for him. But when it comes to being an activist, he goes about it the right way. He waits for the moments. He does it in a professional manner as a professional athlete does. Right now, the way that Colin Kaepernick is doing this in a quote-unquote controversial fashion looks more like a spoiled brat. For those of you who don't know Colin Kaepernick's background, he was adopted by a white family and played at the college Nevada, where he played football and baseball on a scholarship. So then going to the 49ers, he's played in a Super Bowl. He's got a max $100+ million contract. He does not know what it's like to be oppressed. So if you want to support a movement, I am all for that. If you want to back up people that actually go through those issues, I'm all for that. And that's great. But don't try to act like you're the one going through them. So you're going to disrespect people that have given you the right to use your platform as a professional athlete to speak out on these things. And a lot of people say, oh, well, it's his right, and there's people in the military that are backing him up and supporting him. And yeah, you know what they're all saying is that, yes, you have your ability to speak up and stand up for that because of the people that have gone and lost their lives or gone and fought in battle for you. That's what they've said. That they agree with the fact that he has a freedom of speech and a freedom to act this way. But none of them, not once, anybody, whether it's been a previous coach, whether it's been a military member that the media has spoken to, not one of them has said that they are okay with the fact that he's being disrespectful. All of them have all said, oh, well, I wish he would have gone about it in a different way. So, to me, like I said, you want to support him. He's talked about donating money to, charities that help get this movement of, making a change. Then I'm all for that. Donate your money. Put your money where your mouth is, so to speak. I'm all for that. That's great. But don't try to pull the wool over everybody's eyes and act like you're the one that's going through these problems and that you're not going to do anything different until you see change. Like, that's just wrong. The way that he's going about it, the way that he's handled it has been piss poor. And I think that, the one person that I thought that people were like, I think he was kind of brutal on him, was Alex Boone, who's now a lineman for the Minnesota Vikings, who is a former 49er lineman, who literally said if I were to see him do that, I'd have a problem with it, and him and I would have a problem. I support people who are willing to back that up. I've heard people say, well, there's other guys, like I know, the Seahawks game, there was a guy who sat down during the national anthem too in their last preseason game to support him. Eric Reed is a guy who's kind of been on Kaepernick's side about supporting this stuff. Man, we all want to see change for the better. I think as a country, we're tired of seeing violent acts. We're tired of seeing, oh, we're oppressed because of cops, and, other races saying we're oppressed because, we're looked at as, racist, or, whatever the case may be, that, you feel like you're being oppressed or you have, issues with this country over. We would all like to see change. And we would all like to have better awareness of what's going on. And there's a way to bring and shed light on these issues on a stronger fashion, and there's, other ways to go about it. Because if you notice things in the media, what is the media shown when it comes to these issues? Negativity. It's shown black people on a hysterical side of things, of, people getting killed and them being like, well, the cops did this and let's get the cops and blah, blah. And then on the, the government side, as far as the cops go, they're showing cops going, I didn't do anything wrong. These people are the ones being the aggressors and blah, blah. The media is literally using each other between the civilized public and the government officials and cops to face off against each other. Like, do we not see that? Do we not see that that the media is using a negative spin on things with this stuff? I'm not saying they're trying to create, chaos, but I would definitely say that they are using this as that there's a problem here, and keep in mind, we are in a presidential race. It is coming to an end here in the last few months, but generally when things happen like that, like, there's a media spin to things. I've said this before on this program. I don't watch the news because, for one thing, it's depressing. It's sad to watch. That all they want to put is negative things on the news. They don't want to show you the Good Samaritan. There was a story of Cam Newton who went ahead, and this lady saw him. She was at a restaurant with her husband, and Cam Newton and some of his teammates were there eating. And apparently it was in like a city type area where there were lots of homeless people on the streets and they come out in the evening. If you've been to a big city, you know that homeless people kind of hang out in the doorways of buildings that are closed, after dark and things of that nature, And this lady said that nobody really was paying attention to what was going on when Cam Newton and his teammates left, and that was that they bought a bunch of extra food, and that he was quietly in the group that he was walking in, just handing these bags off to homeless people that nobody was, paying any attention to. Those are the type of stories that the media should be on. They shouldn't be on, was Cam Newton going to cry this year because what happened when he lost in the Super Bowl, that he just, up and walked out on the press conference and he didn't handle himself well. Granted, that is a story in sports. But right now, in this time where we're having all these issues of violence and people not being, good-hearted, people that are having issues with the goodness in people, and seeing the positive in people. That's a story that should be covered. I'm not saying Cam Newton didn't want any, notoriety for it, but it's a story that should have been picked up. Just like several days ago, there was a lady who posted a picture and a comment on, I believe it was on Facebook, somebody from her son's school. Her son was like 8 or 10 years old, and he had autism. And he was sitting in the lunchroom, and apparently more often than not, he sits by himself and eats. And Florida State sent football players to this school. It was a elementary, middle school type deal, and they were there to speak and kind of, do an engagement with the community. And one of the receivers from Florida State actually saw this kid sitting by himself and went and had lunch with him. Somebody saw it and took a picture of it and from the school and sent it to the boy's mom. And she posted a comment on Facebook just thanking the receiver, not knowing who he was, but just thanking him for sitting down to have lunch with her son. So that way she felt a little bit better that day, knowing that her son wasn't alone in, having lunch and being able to, engage with somebody and not feel like an outsider, not feel different. Those are the stories that I want to see. Those are the stories that I want to read about. You don't hear about, the people that stepped up and helped, the elderly, or that, helped in a community and things of that nature. All you hear is about all these deaths and these tragedies and this chaos. And the media does that for a reason. There's a reason why that it's unbalanced. I'm not saying that they never cover positive stories, because they're sprinkled in there. Don't get me wrong, but by and large, by far, it's more negative than positive. It's definitely cringeworthy more often than not to watch all this stuff every day. I damn sure don't watch CNN or CNBC for the very fact that you want to show stuff going on around the world that are issues, and you want people in America to be enthralled in what's going on in the world around them. We can't even fix the fucking problems we got going on in the United States, and you want me to worry about what's going on around the world? I'm sorry, I don't want to watch that. I don't want to watch people who have issues in other countries, and we got to be, the people to run in and play superhero when we can't even fix real issues we have going on here. There's a reason why I'd rather have SportsCenter as my news every day versus, the local news or the world news on my TV every night when I get home in the evening when I'm done for my day, So just, like I said, as far as Colin Kaepernick goes, to wrap that point up, to come bring this back full circle, there's a lot of things going on. And is this really a newsworthy story as much as it's been made out to be? I think it's newsworthy, but I think that it's getting too much credit, and it's causing things to be up in arms and in an uproar that it doesn't need to be. It's a guy who's speaking out for his beliefs. Okay, that's great. But to give it as much attention as it's getting, I don't think that it deserves that. Because now, how many more people are threatening him? How many more people are threatening, I'm sure, his parents and his family because of this? I don't agree with the way that he's going about it, but I also understand that, he's doing what he thinks is right. So, I think people need around him, his management team, his family, they need to speak to him and how he's handling things and try to come up with a better way to go about doing those things. I know listener number 12 left a comment who was defending him weeks ago when we talked about Kaepernick's issue in training camp and the preseason about having a fatigued arm. He spoke out against Manuel. Listener number 12 said that he was going to have, a great year and that you could bank on that. Now, following this these current events that he's gone through, listener number 12 has changed his tune and called Kaepernick a piece of shit. So hopefully maybe we can get him to call in or show up for a podcast soon and kind of see if we can talk him off the ledge a little bit, because I know that listener number 12 is actually a 49er fan. So, and he, as much as he doesn't like Blaine Gabbert at this point, he would just rather not see Colin Kaepernick play due to these recent events that have gone on. Manuel touched on Bosa from the Chargers getting this ridiculous amount of money that went through this whole thing about how he didn't want to sign with the Chargers until he got his signing bonus up front. This is another case of the NFL and a player having a standoff with an organization and a player, and the player saying, I want more money, I want this, I want that, and they cave to him. I think some of these kids, and he's a kid, he's coming out of college, he's a kid, some of these guys need to get their shit together, and some of these GMs and owners need to grow a spine and a pair of balls and say that if you want to play for us, this is what the standard is. This guy just set a precedent for draftees going forward, that when they want to hold out, they're going to hold out. And we're going to see which organization has the balls to stand up and go, nah, man, you don't get to hold us up for ransom. We'll kick rocks. We'll find somebody else that's willing to be a team player and willing to do this. And there's been great points that this guy hasn't even played a snap in the NFL yet. He hasn't even shown what he can do or his potential. So you don't get to act that way and sit here and do this, because for all the Chargers know, this guy could get hurt. This guy could be a complete bust, and they've coughed up all this money now, and for what? So to see that, it's a bit ridiculous. So hopefully, I hope for the Chargers' sake that he's worth the money, but definitely some of these GMs and owners need to grow a pair and shut that type of shit down, because it's completely unnecessary. Because, like I said, it sets a precedent going forward for these other guys that are going to be coming into the league tonight. And I know that, like I said, college football kicked off this weekend. The local team, Fresno State, has a big game against Nebraska this weekend. Hopefully, Fresno can come through and pull off the upset. It'd be pretty sweet to see that. Unfortunately, my college team is Oregon, so it's not Fresno State, so I don't get to go see Oregon all the time. There's plans on them coming and playing Fresno here in the next couple years, though, so hopefully that'll be an opportunity. They play UC Davis is who they play this weekend. Supposed to be a quote-unquote gimme game, so we'll see how that goes. The jerseys that they've been talking about wearing are gray with yellow numbers this weekend. That by far, Oregon's got the number one jerseys in college football, thanks to the Nike hookup that they have being right there with the Nike headquarters in Oregon. So always fun to see what kind of jerseys they unveil each year, because the combinations are endless. Like, it's pretty ridiculous on how much they have helmets, jerseys, cleats, everything you could think of, accessories to go with all that stuff. So it definitely is crazy. And I gotta come. Speaking of that, I gotta come up on an Oregon jersey. I haven't got an Oregon jersey yet. Gotta come up on that. Marcus McMaryion, the backup quarterback at Oregon State. We've mentioned him on the program before. Oregon State played earlier this week. I believe they had the Thursday game, if I'm not mistaken. And I got to watch some of the game. I didn't get to watch all of it. Unfortunately, there were other things going on. But they wound up losing, unfortunately, 30-23 in a close game. A guy that Manuel mentioned on Monday was Sean Mannion. He's fighting for a job. So hopefully that guy, it pans out for him and that he gets a roster spot. Saw some decent things out of him at Oregon State last year. I'm not a big Oregon State fan, but like we've said before, having a local kid on that team definitely makes you want to pay attention, because we want to see him get his opportunity and see him do some good things. His family are good people. We've mentioned that in the past. They're big supporters. I've seen them from social media and stuff. They're always at his home games, and they always make that trip. And I don't know how they do it, but definitely good for him that he has that type of support system around him, and definitely going to keep our eyes out to see if he gets an opportunity this year, because the guy who's a starting quarterback was a transfer. So if that guy wouldn't have transferred, we're pretty sure that Marcus would have been the starter already this year. So he still has this is his junior year, I believe. He's a redshirt junior, so he'll have his senior year and then one more year of eligibility if he chooses to use it. And they're on the rise. They haven't been like a powerhouse team in a long time, but they've definitely been on the way up. So definitely somebody to look out for. And because obviously Oregon and Oregon State, they're in the Pac-12 together. They play each other every year. It's the rivalry game, the Civil War game. And last year when Oregon played Oregon State, Marcus scored his first touchdown in that game. So we'll definitely be keeping an eye out for those games, and for him hopefully to hear that he gets some reps in this year during game time. Things we got coming up. We're going to be trying to get a hold. Early on we mentioned getting our tattoo artist in on the podcast, and our schedules have kind of flip-flopped around with him being out of town and us switching things up with our busy schedules. So we're going to reach out to him again, see if we can't get him on the show. Definitely want to get him out here, or us go up there and visit him and talk some business about that stuff. UFC 203 is coming up next weekend, I believe, or weekend after. I want to say it's next weekend. Heavyweight title on the line. Stipe Miocic, Alistair Overeem. Should be a crazy fight. CM Punk makes his debut against Mickey Gall. I want to see Punk do well. Lots of people have said Punk's going to surprise you. You guys don't know what he's got in store. So I definitely want to see him. This kid's looking to make a name for himself, and he's trying to use CM Punk as a stepping stone, because he has notoriety for being somewhat famous, even though he has no background in martial arts until the last 2 years that he's been training, which I'm hoping for some people. He's gone through some injuries and he's gotten 100% healthy now, and I'm hoping that he shocks the world, so to speak, and shows them that he definitely can hang, and that he's definitely going to be a dude who's around for a little while. He is in his late 30s. He's getting a late start in the game, but definitely looking forward to seeing how that pans out. There were fights this weekend also. I'm going to say Andre Arlovsky and Josh Barnett were the main event, I think. But it was on Fight Pass. It wasn't on TV, is my understanding. So if you don't have Fight Pass, you can't watch it. So that'll be something that will be coming up with UFC 203. We'll definitely be talking about that a little more in depth as it comes up. And Monday, me and Manuel will be face to face, and definitely going to call him out about some of the shit talking he did on his episode that he did by himself. So that ought to be interesting and fun to listen to for sure. But like I said, I'm not worried, because I know that he don't want none. He don't want to start a shit talking war. He's old, his brain's a little bit slow, it don't work as fast as it used to, and I'm the young cat in this duo. So I thought we were supposed to be on the same team, man. But if you want to draw a line in the sand, you'll lose. I promise you'll lose. Every day of the week and twice on Sunday. I'm just that good. All right. So I'm gonna cut it a little bit short today. Manuel was like, well, I spoke for 52 minutes or 54 minutes, whatever it was. Yeah, well, the week before, me and Gio went an hour and a half. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it short here at about 50 minutes, because we've had a number of longer episodes as of late. So this has been episode 36. Once again, we still haven't hit a number as old as Manuel's age yet. But we'll get there. I promise we'll get there. And as always, I'm Justin, and I've been totally unprofessional.